On Thursday, July 5, the financier, in his private jet, Jeffrey Epstein, landed at a New Jersey airport. FBI agents were waiting for him when he arrived, and they promptly arrested him on suspicion of sex trafficking. From his multi-million-dollar private island and his opulent mansions in New York and Florida, Epstein was accused of running a massive sex trafficking ring affecting dozens, if not hundreds, of victims. Prosecutors had hoped to use Epstein's incarceration as leverage to secure incriminating testimony from him regarding his alleged accomplices. However, Epstein passed away in his New York City jail cell only 3 weeks later. The investigation into Epstein's sex trafficking network will continue even after his death. In fact, it's possible that this is only the start. Welcome to Financial Fortune, the channel that keeps you informed on the latest business news and trends. In today's video, we'll be discussing the recent lawsuits against J.P. Morgan, one of the largest banks in the world, as well as former J.P. Morgan executives Jess Staley related to their business relationship with disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein, with allegations of facilitating Epstein's financial crimes and turning a blind eye to illegal activity. The question on everyone's mind is, how will J.P. Morgan and its executives respond? Join us as we examine the details of this developing story and what it means for the future of the banking industry. On November 24, 2022, an unnamed victim of the late financier Jeffrey Epstein filed a lawsuit against J.P. Morgan for its alleged role in Epstein's untimely demise. U.S. Virgin Islands is also suing J.P. Morgan, claiming that the bank knew about and enabled Epstein's illegal activities. There may be years of litigation ahead before these cases are settled, but the situation does not bode well for the largest bank in the United States. The legal team at J.P. Morgan has been putting in extra hours, and on March 8 they developed a proactive defense strategy. One of the largest UK investment banks, Barclays, had Jess Staley as its chief executive officer, CEO, from 2015 to 2021. He spent over 30 years at J.P. Morgan, eventually becoming the head of the investment banking division there between the years 2000 and 2010. This was before he left for his current position at Barclays. Staley and Jeffrey Epstein, a J.P. Morgan client, were very close. Approximately 1,200 emails were traded between the two men. An anonymous accuser claims that Staley knew about Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking activities and used his position as a high-ranking J.P. Morgan executive to effectively make Epstein's client untouchable. If the allegations against Staley are true, he hid the situation from his employer. When Epstein's bank was considering cutting ties with him after his 2008 prostitution conviction, he even argued on his behalf. J.P. Morgan is not admitting any wrongdoing, but they are nervously suing Staley in the hopes that he will be held personally responsible for any wrongdoing committed by the bank, not J.P. Morgan. Here, in this clip, we'll investigate Jess Staley's rumored relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and what it may reveal about widespread corruption in the financial sector. It is important to remember that the allegations made against J.P. Morgan and Staley are, at this point, merely allegations. Staley claims his innocence and, of course, he is presumed to be so until proven guilty. J.P. Morgan involvement. In the early 1990s, Epstein launched a sex trafficking business. Enterprise's primary goal was to get underage girls into a position where Jeffrey Epstein and his accomplices could sexually assault and exploit them for money. Epstein used the money he received from his wealthy accomplices to finance his scheme. Epstein realized in the late 1990s that he needed a bank to help him hide his wealth and pay off his victims with hush money. These sums added up to millions of dollars, and he needed the services of a bank to safely keep and move around that much cash in order to keep his business running. There was a problem because financial institutions are subject to stringent, know your customer and anti-money laundering regulations. A bank has an obligation to investigate the source of any withdrawals totaling several $million or more. His entire operation could be jeopardized if he did this. Epstein required a bank with a blink and miss it policy. Around the turn of the millennium, Epstein met and became friendly with Jess Staley, a senior executive at J.P. Morgan. Epstein and Staley reached an agreement in exchange for dropping their lawsuit. Staley would use his influence within J.P. Morgan to guarantee that his illegal dealings would go undetected. He also assisted Epstein in establishing a number of shell corporations for the sole purpose of funneling illegal funds to his associates and victims. In exchange, Epstein would introduce J.P. Morgan's private bank to his well-to-do acquaintances. One of these friends, retail magnate Leslie Wexner, allegedly deposited over $1 billion with J.P. Morgan. Staley claimed credit for the influx of new, highly profitable ultra-high-net-worth clients. Epstein's alleged connection to Glenn Dubin, a billionaire, was the most valuable asset he allegedly provided to J.P. Morgan. Glenn co-founded the successful hedge fund Highbridge Capital Management. The former model Eva Anderson Dubin, who he had dated in the 1990s, became his wife. Epstein facilitated J.P. Morgan's 2005 acquisition of a 55% stake in Hybrid, which was a lucrative investment for the bank. Staley claimed credit for Epstein's successful business ventures and clientele. Staley was able to move up the ranks as a result of his accomplishments, becoming the head of asset management in 2001 and then the head of the entire investment banking division in 2009. Prosecutors in the U.S. Virgin Islands claim that Epstein and his shell companies made millions of dollars in suspicious withdrawals over the years. An example of this is when Epstein wired $600,000 from his J.P. Morgan bank account to a woman who gave his apartment as her address. Epstein also established a foundation under the guise of a charity from which he funneled questionable funds to young women. A Florida woman called the police in 2005 to report that her 14-year-old stepdaughter had been taken to Epstein's Palm Beach mansion and paid to engage in sexually explicit behavior. After a year-long investigation, local police and FBI agents allegedly discovered several girls who had been paid to engage in sexual acts with Epstein. Epstein admitted in 2008 that he had arranged for the prostitution of a minor. He spent the majority of his 18-month prison term on work release, where he was free from confinement for up to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. Epstein worked at a non-profit foundation he founded before his sentencing and then shut down immediately after his release from prison. The prosecution agreed to end the FBI investigation, which may have led to the discovery of more victims and conspirators, as part of the plea bargain. Epstein was placed on the official sex offender registry, and his charges were widely reported in the media. However, many critics argue that the plea deal was unusually lenient given the severity of his crimes. In spite of being incarcerated in Florida, the lawsuit claims that Staley kept in touch with the Epstein. He even took a plane to Florida to see him while he was on work release there. Allegedly, Staley sent emails to Epstein from his J.P. Morgan email account 1,200 times while he worked there. The emails revealed an unexpectedly close relationship between the two men, one that went far beyond the typical banker-client dynamic. Epstein's prostitution conviction sparked a debate among J.P. Morgan's upper management. For public relations and possible legal reasons, many executives felt the bank should cut ties with Epstein. An investigation by the Financial Times found that Staley claimed Epstein had paid his debt to society by serving his time in prison. In the end, he was successful in convincing his colleagues to continue working with Epstein. Jess Staley left J.P. Morgan in 2013 to become a managing partner at Blue Mountain Capital, a private equity firm. When Staley left the bank, Epstein had no one to speak up for him. J.P. Morgan cut ties with Epstein within a few months of Staley's resignation. Soon after, Epstein started banking with Deutsche Bank in Germany. Deutsche Bank paid $150 million in 2020 to resolve legal claims arising from its dealings with Epstein. Barclays, a British investment bank, was not doing well in 2015. They were consistently underperforming when compared to larger American competitors like J.P. Morgan, in terms of profitability ratios. They brought on board only Staley in the hopes of reversing their fortunes. Staley had a stellar record of accomplishment as he doubled the size of J.P. Morgan's asset management division. The man who had such great success at J.P. Morgan would be ideal to help reorganize it. Staley began an extensive reorganization in 2015 with the goal of maximizing efficiency and profits. Through 2021, the media's attention to the scandal in finance was reignited after Jeffrey Epstein's second arrest and subsequent death in 2019. Here, Staley assured the board of directors at Berkeley that his previous association with Epstein was strictly business, and that he was unaware of any wrongdoing on Epstein's part. British regulators were able to access 1,200 emails between Staley and Epstein during his tenure at JP Morgan, shortly afterward. These emails, as we've already established, appear to show that the two men had a much closer relationship than was reasonable. Staley has not admitted guilt, but he has agreed to resign as CEO in November 2021. Thanks for tuning in to Financial Fortune. As we wrap up our discussion of the lawsuits against JP Morgan and its former executives Jess Staley, related to their business relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, we want to know your thoughts. What do you think this means for the future of the banking industry? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more insightful business news and analysis.